Right. This lecture is on cell communication. So cell communication is how cells talk to one another. And there's two major objectives for this topic. The first is to compare the three types of cell communication. There's cell-to-cell contact, short distance, and long distance. And then we're going to work on identifying the signal, receptor, secreting cell, and target cell when we're given some situations. So let's get started. First, I want to talk about why this is even important. So in multicellular organisms like us, it's important that our cells can talk to one another so that we can cause responses as an entire being. So one example of this is how our brain is able to talk to the rest of our body and allow us to move and think and respond to our environment. Another example is in unicellular organisms like bacteria. Bacteria don't talk amongst an organism, but they talk from one bacteria to another so that they can work together and coordinate their actions. So, like I said, there are three main types of cell communication, and it really just has to do with how far away the two cells are that need to communicate. The first is in cell-to-cell contact, so it's exactly what it sounds like. The cells are making direct contact, and then they are able to talk to each other by that contact. The second is a little bit further away. This is when cells are actually going to release a signal into the extracellular space, and then they're going to send it to a nearby cell that has a receptor that matches that signal. And then lastly is long distance communication, and this is when you have organs that are very far away or two organisms that are very far away, and that signal needs to travel a pretty far distance. So we're going to go into each one of these and give an example of each. First is cell-to-cell contact. And this is when the cells are directly touching each other. So it's a little bit different in animal and plant cells because plant cells have cell walls, which you can recall from our study last year. So in animal cells, if two cells are touching each other, they can actually trade signals between their cytoplasm by these connections called gap junctions. And plant cells have the exact same idea, except for the channels that they use are called plasmodesmata, which are really just tunnels that allow the cell walls to connect to one another so that they can trade different signals to each other and communicate like that. This also happens from two cells that are not going to fuse their cytoplasms to trade signals, but when one cell touches another cell, and cells can present a signal on their surface, and then the other cell can have a receptor, and those can fit together. But nothing is released. They literally come into contact with one another. So three different kinds of cell-to-cell contact when one cell is going to send a message to another. One really important example of this is in the immune system. So your immune system has these cells called macrophages, and phage means to eat. So they eat invaders into your body, be it a virus or a bacteria. They literally engulf it, and then they break down that pathogen, and then they take a little piece of it, and then they present it on the surface. And they do that with this protein called MHC2. So, for example, if you were to get sick with a common cold, which is caused by a virus, that macrophage can eat the virus, break it into all of its little parts, and then almost like in the olden days when they would have a battle, and then they would defeat the enemy, and then sometimes they would put like a head on like a spear or something to say like, we won, here it is. This cell is presenting a piece of that devoured virus. And what's cool is that other cells in your immune system can touch that cell because they have a receptor that matches that MHC2 protein, and then they can recognize that little piece of virus, and then those immune system cells called T cells, which maybe you've heard of, they can go activate other immune responses and help your body to fight that virus. So lots of parts of your body, lots of organisms rely on cell-to-cell contact, but this is just one really important example in us. The next type of cell-to-cell communication is short distance. So when you have two cells that are not touching, but they're pretty close to each other. And the main difference here is that you have a signal that is actually released into the extracellular space and then received by that neighboring cell. So here we start to identify some players. So the signal in this picture is that green molecule that is secreted by the secreting cell. And to secrete just means to release. So you have where that signal starts, and then the target cell is where that signal is received. And the thing that receives that signal is called a receptor. And those two match together in a really similar way that enzymes and substrates do. They are made for each other, and their shapes are very, very specific to one another. So here the signals are traveling short distances, and there's two really important examples here to know. One is growth factors, which allows cells to sort of sense their environment to see, I'm going to release this signal, and I'm going to see how far away my neighbors are. And if there are a lot, then maybe it's not time to grow. And if they're traveling very far, then maybe it is time to grow. And another really important example of this is in the nervous system. So those of you who have studied psychology may have learned about neurons. And I want to talk through this example real quick because it's one of the most important examples of short distance. So when your nerve cells, which are the cells of your nervous system, which is involved with your brain, need to tell your body to do something. So maybe you have a nerve cell that is talking to a muscle. That allows my brain to tell my hand to move. Right? We need to send a signal. And what that actually looks like at the cellular level is that you have this yellow cell here that is the axon and the axon terminal, and it releases these signals, in this case they're called neurotransmitters, into this very, very short distance. It's called a synapse. And then those neurotransmitters will travel just a little bit, and then they'll be received by that target cell, which in this case would be a muscle. And that muscle cell has specialized receptors that are designed for those signals. And when that signal connects to the receptor, then the muscle can contract and you are able to move. So really, really short distance here. Those nerves are almost touching the muscle cells, but not quite. And that signal, in this case, the neurotransmitter, is released into the space and then is able to cause a response in that target cell. The final example is long distance signaling, and to tell if the distance is long, usually that signal is going to travel through the bloodstream. That's the way I tell. And when the signal is very long, we call that signal a hormone. It's just a long distance signaling molecule or messenger. So like I said, we're usually involving the circulatory system here, a blood vessel like an artery or a vein. And in plants, they also have vessels. We were just talking about xylem, right? So they are able to send signals long distance to different parts of the plant. Plants also use a lot of signals in the air, like ethylene is a really important example. Maybe you've noticed that if you have one piece of ripe fruit and you put it next to another, then that other one becomes ripe. They're able to send signals from one fruit to another through the air. And hormones are all about shape. So when you're traveling through the bloodstream, those signals are touching every single cell of your body, but they really are only supposed to cause a response in one target cell. And the way that they know what target cell is the right one is based on shape. And some signaling molecules have one target cell. They will only activate one cell. And some signaling molecules have a wide variety of target cells and are able to cause a lot of responses. The organ system that is related to this is the endocrine system, which involves different glands and hormones in your body, so maybe you have heard of this. So an example of long distance signaling would be in the stress response. You have this hormone called adrenaline. It's released by the adrenal gland, which sits on top of your kidneys. It's like a little party hat on top of your kidneys. And when that hormone is made, it goes into the bloodstream, and then it's able to travel all over your body. The blood is like the highway of your body, and it can reach target cells all over. So when you release adrenaline, cortisol is another hormone that is released by the adrenal gland that is involved in the stress response. It can go to your lungs and cause you to breathe faster when you're stressed out. It can go to your skin and allow you to sweat like maybe you do when you're nervous. And it slows down your digestion. It makes your heart beat really fast. All of these different responses involved in that target cell. So here, a lot of different cells have that matching receptor for these hormones because they all are supposed to respond to that hormone. And like I said, some are much more specific and will only respond to one. So this is the end of this presentation. The things that you want to focus on are, what are the different types of cell communication? What distinguishes cell-to-cell contact, short distance, and long distance? And can you identify the secreting cell, the signal, and the target cell, and that receptor when given some different situations? And this is what we're going to practice in class this week. Looking forward to it.